Welcome, coin hunters and collectors. Today, we're taking a fascinating journey into the world of Liberty State quarter-dollar coins, small pieces of American history that can sometimes hide surprising stories in plain sight. These quarters may look ordinary at first glance, but their dates, mint marks, condition, and unusual characteristics can make them especially interesting to collectors. So before you spend that quarter sitting in your pocket, take a closer look, because you never know what details might make an everyday coin worth a second look. In this video, we'll explore some of the most interesting and potentially valuable state quarters, focusing on the features collectors pay close attention to, including mint marks, strike quality, surface condition, errors, varieties, and overall preservation. Some coins may be common in circulated condition, while others can become much more desirable when they display an unusual minting characteristic or survive in exceptional condition. The key is knowing exactly what to look for. The Georgia State Quarter from 1999, representing the state admitted to the Union in 1788, may look like an ordinary piece of pocket change, but its design carries a remarkable connection to American history. On the reverse, the familiar peach dominates the composition, surrounded by the state's name and the inscription 1788, while the obverse carries the portrait of George Washington. Produced as part of the first wave of the 50 State Quarters program, the 1999 Georgia Quarter became one of the earliest coins in a series that would eventually transform the way ordinary Americans looked at their change. The Denver minted version bears a small D mint mark, and millions upon millions were produced, meaning the date and mint mark alone do not make a coin rare. Yet that is exactly what makes the search fascinating. When a coin is common, the real excitement begins when something about an individual example is decidedly uncommon. A sharp strike, an unusual surface, a genuine mint error, or an exceptionally preserved specimen can separate an everyday Georgia quarter from the kind of coin collectors stop and examine twice. Look closely at the reverse, and you can appreciate why the Georgia quarter is so distinctive. The peach sits prominently in the center, surrounded by oak branches and the state motto, wisdom, justice, moderation, creating a design that is immediately recognizable even when the coin has spent years circulating through stores, vending machines, cash drawers, and old jars. On a circulated example, the highest points of the design can become dull and flattened, while the copper-colored edge can become visible as the outer copper-nickel layers experience wear. That metal color is worth observing carefully, because discoloration by itself does not prove an error. A genuine minting anomaly generally requires stronger evidence than unusual tunning, scratches, stains, or environmental damage. Collectors may also examine the lettering, date, peach, branches, rim, and Washington portrait for abnormalities that appear to have originated during production. A doubled letter or number, for example, should not automatically be called a doubled die. Machine doubling, die deterioration, damage after circulation, and lighting effects can create deceptive appearances. The closer you look, the more important it becomes to separate an interesting-looking coin from a genuinely collectible mint-made variety. Now imagine finding a 1999 D Georgia quarter that looks dramatically different from the millions of ordinary pieces surrounding it. Perhaps the strike appears unusually strong, the design elements seem sharply separated, or an area near the rim shows a feature that does not look like ordinary wear. This is where the hunt becomes almost detective work. Start with the basics. Compare the coin with another normal 1999 D Georgia quarter, inspect the rim from several angles, rotate the coin to check strike alignment, and examine the lettering under consistent magnification. If you have an accurate digital scale, a weight difference can be a useful screening clue, but it is not proof of rarity because dirt, damage, wear, plating issues, or inaccurate scales can produce misleading results. Metal color should also be evaluated carefully. A strange golden, reddish, Gray or dark appearance may come from tunning, chemical exposure, cleaning, or environmental conditions, rather than a valuable composition error. Never clean or polish a potentially unusual coin, because removing its original surface can reduce collector appeal and destroy evidence that might otherwise help establish its history. This is also where the story of the 1999 Georgia quarter becomes much more interesting than simply asking, "How much is this coin worth?" The overwhelming majority of ordinary circulated examples are worth around their face value, and even many attractive examples will not command dramatic premiums. But collectors are interested in the exceptions: certified high-grade pieces, legitimate die varieties, dramatic mint errors, and unusual examples with strong documentation. Imagine pulling one from a handful of change and discovering that its condition is far superior to the typical coins around it. In a hypothetical storytelling ladder, a minor but genuinely collectible variation might be discussed in the $2,500 to $3,500 range, while a substantially more notable authenticated example could be imagined around $9,000. A high-grade coin might enter a hypothetical $5,000 discussion, while an unusual mint anomaly could inspire a $6,000 scenario. These numbers are illustrative possibilities for storytelling, not established values for every 1999 Georgia quarter, and certainly not guarantees. Actual market value depends on the exact variety or error, condition, authentication, certification, eye appeal, provenance, and what buyers are willing to pay at a particular moment. Take that thought even further, because extraordinary coins can create extraordinary emotional reactions. A legitimate rare collector piece in exceptional condition could be imagined in a $7,500 storytelling scenario, while an exceptionally preserved or uncommon example might be discussed around $8,000. An unusual discovery with strong collector demand could reach an illustrative $8,500 scenario, and an extraordinary or historically significant example could be framed as approaching $9,000. Again, these figures are deliberately illustrative rather than promises, appraisals, or guaranteed market prices. The difference between a normal quarter and a valuable error can be enormous, but the difference between a suspected error and a confirmed error can be just as important. A coin that looks like it has a double date may turn out to have machine doubling. A strange rim may simply be damage. An odd color may be environmental staining. That is why responsible collectors resist the temptation to announce a fortune too early. If a discovery were truly worth thousands, it could feel like finding a sudden windfall or even the beginning of a down payment on a home. But the excitement should always come after careful verification, not before it. So if you have a 1999 Georgia quarter in your collection, resist the urge to clean it, scratch it, or alter it in an attempt to make a suspected feature easier to see. Place it safely in a non-damaging holder, photograph both sides under neutral lighting, and compare it with authenticated examples from reputable references. Pay particular attention to the relationship between the rim and design, the alignment of the dies, the shape of the letters and numbers, the condition of the copper-nickel surface, and any apparent doubling that remains consistent when viewed from different angles. Weight can help identify something unusual, but it should be treated as one clue among many rather than a final answer. If the coin continues to appear genuinely abnormal, professional authentication becomes the critical next step. A recognized grading or authentication service can determine whether an apparent variety or error is real and can provide documentation that gives collectors confidence. In the world of coin collecting, evidence is everything, and a mysterious quarter becomes far more exciting when its unusual characteristics can be independently verified. And perhaps that is the real magic of the 1999 Georgia quarter. Not that every example is secretly worth thousands, but that an ordinary object can become a gateway into American history, minting technology, and the thrill of discovery. Millions of people have handled these quarters without ever stopping to study the tiny details separating an ordinary coin from a potentially exceptional one. The peach, the 1788 date, the branches, the motto, Washington's portrait, and that tiny D connect a simple quarter to Georgia's place in the founding story of the United States and to the enormous nationwide experiment that was the 50-state quarters program. Somewhere between pocket change and a collector's album, there is always the possibility of an unusual survivor waiting to be noticed. The key is patience. Inspect, compare, document, and authenticate before believing the biggest numbers. Because sometimes the most exciting discoveries do not come from a treasure chest or an old auction catalog. They come from the handful of coins sitting, unnoticed on an ordinary table. And just when you think the hunt is over, remember that the 1999 D Georgia quarter may only be the beginning. The most fascinating part of coin collecting is that rarity does not always announce itself with a dramatic shine or an obvious warning sign. Sometimes it hides inside a tiny letter, an unusual edge, a strange strike, an unexpected alignment, or a feature that millions of people have overlooked for years. That means the next coin you receive at a store, discover in an old collection, or pull from a forgotten jar deserves at least one careful look before it disappears back into circulation. The Georgia quarter teaches us an important lesson. History can travel through our hands disguised as spare change, and extraordinary discoveries can begin with nothing more than curiosity. So keep your eyes open, keep your valuable-looking coins untouched until they can be verified, and keep watching, because the next coin we uncover could be even more shocking, and its story might make this Georgia quarter look like only the first chapter of a much bigger treasure hunt. The Alabama State Quarter from 2003 D carries a fascinating connection to American history, because the date 1819 on the design does not represent the year the coin was minted, but the year Alabama entered the Union as the 22nd state, while the quarter itself emerged from the hugely popular 50-state quarters program. On the reverse, the coin presents Helen Keller seated beside a branch, with the inscription "Spirit of Courage" appearing in both English and Braille, creating a design that is immediately recognizable but surprisingly easy to overlook in everyday change. The Denver D Mint mark identifies this particular example as having been struck at the Denver Mint, and that small letter can become an important starting point when collectors investigate a potentially unusual piece. At first glance, this may look like nothing more than an ordinary quarter, perhaps one that has traveled through cash registers, vending machines, pockets, and drawers for years. But the real excitement begins when you stop looking at it as 25 cents and start examining it as an object created under precise industrial conditions. Every detail, from the sharpness of Keller's portrait to the clarity of the Braille lettering, the spacing around the inscriptions, and the condition of the rim, can tell a different story about how that individual coin survived after leaving the mint. The historical story behind the Alabama quarter adds another layer of fascination. Alabama became a state in 1819, and the quarter connects that milestone with Helen Keller, one of the most influential figures associated with Alabama and with the history of overcoming disability through education and determination. That combination makes the reverse unusually meaningful compared with a design that simply displays a landmark or state symbol. The coin was produced in an era when the United States Mint was striking enormous quantities of circulating quarters, meaning ordinary examples are generally not rare simply because they carry the 2003 date or the Alabama design. Yet mass production does not mean every individual coin is identical. High-speed presses, dies, planchets, striking pressure, alignment, handling, and storage conditions can produce differences that collectors notice immediately. Some pieces may show weak details, unusual surface characteristics, die deterioration, or genuine mint-made errors, while others become interesting because they survived in exceptionally sharp condition. That is where the story changes from history to detective work, because the coin in your hand may be common, or it may contain a feature that deserves a much closer look. Now imagine turning the quarter under a strong light and examining the reverse one section at a time. Start with Helen Keller's portrait and the surrounding lettering, then move toward the Braille characters and the branch beneath the portrait. Look for legitimate doubling that affects the design itself rather than ordinary machine damage or postman scratches. Genuine double-die characteristics can show separation, notching, or distinct secondary contours in specific areas, although not every apparent doubling is valuable, and many dramatic-looking distortions are simply caused by mechanical damage after the coin left the mint. Check the rim carefully as well. A normal quarter should have a consistent, properly formed edge, while a genuine striking anomaly may produce an unusual broad rim, incomplete design detail near the edge, or another documented mint-related characteristic. Examine the strike alignment by comparing the obverse and reverse orientation, and look for areas that appear unusually weak or sharply struck. The key is patience. Do not clean the coin, polish it, scrape it, or try to make a suspected error more visible, because cleaning can permanently damage collector value and destroy important evidence about the coin's original surface. There is another simple test that can help separate imagination from evidence. Pay attention to weight, dimensions, and metal appearance. A normal modern U.S. clad quarter has a characteristic composition and weight, so a noticeably different measurement can justify further investigation, especially if the coin also displays an unusual edge or striking characteristic. But a difference on a household scale is not automatically proof of a rare error. Dirt, wear, damage, corrosion, or inaccurate measuring equipment can all create misleading results. The metal color should also be examined carefully. A strange-looking golden, coppery, dark, or silvery surface may be caused by environmental exposure, chemical reactions, plating, or damage rather than a valuable mint error. The edge can provide another important clue because the copper-colored inner layer of a normal clad coin is visible around the edge, while certain genuine planchet or composition errors can produce unusual appearances. The smartest collector does not jump from an unusual-looking coin to an enormous price. Instead, the collector documents the weight, photographs both sides, records the mint mark, studies the edge, compares the coin with known normal examples, and seeks an experienced professional when the evidence suggests something genuinely unusual. And this is where the value conversation becomes especially intriguing, because collectors do not pay simply for a year printed on a coin. They pay for rarity, condition, authenticity, eye appeal, documented errors, and demand. To illustrate the possibilities rather than promise specific prices, imagine a storytelling ladder beginning around $2,500 to $3,500 for an unusually interesting and well-supported variation, with a more notable authenticated example, potentially entering a hypothetical $9,000 conversation. A high-grade specimen could be discussed around $5,000 in an illustrative scenario, while a verified unusual mint anomaly might move towards $6,000, and a rare collector piece could be imagined around $7,500. An exceptionally preserved or uncommon example might be discussed around $8,000, while an unusual discovery with strong collector demand could reach an illustrative $8,500 level, with an extraordinary or historically significant example approaching $9,000 in this hypothetical ladder. These figures are storytelling examples only, never guarantees, and real market prices can be dramatically lower or, for a genuinely exceptional documented rarity, potentially different altogether. Condition alone does not magically create a five-figure coin, and a supposed error without professional verification should never be treated as proof of value. Think about what a genuine discovery could mean emotionally. Finding an ordinary Alabama quarter might barely register as you empty your pocket at the end of the day, but discovering a properly authenticated rarity could feel like finding a forgotten envelope containing a sudden windfall. For some collectors, the excitement would be comparable to discovering money that could contribute toward a down payment on a home, while others would simply experience the thrill of owning something that almost nobody else possesses. But the most powerful part of the story is not the imagined price tag. It is the transformation of an everyday object into a piece of history worthy of serious attention. A 2003 D Alabama quarter connects the statehood milestone of 1819, Helen Keller's extraordinary legacy, the National Quarter Program, and the technical world of modern coin production in one small piece of metal. If you find one that appears unusual, resist the temptation to immediately announce that you have found a fortune. Photograph it without altering the surface, compare it with reliable references, weigh it accurately, inspect the edge, study the alignment and lettering, and if the evidence remains compelling, have the coin evaluated by a qualified numismatist or professional authentication service. So the next time an Alabama quarter dated 2003 with a small D appears in your change, remember that the most interesting question may not be how old it looks, but what happened to it before it reached your hand. Somewhere beneath the ordinary wear and familiar design could be a tiny clue. A strange rim, an unusual strike, a measurable weight difference, a genuine doubled feature, or an exceptionally preserved surface that makes the coin worth a second look. Most examples will remain ordinary circulated quarters, and that is perfectly normal, but collectors understand that extraordinary discoveries begin with ordinary objects being examined carefully. The 1819 date tells a story about Alabama's entry into the Union. Helen Keller's image tells a story about courage, and the 2003 D mint mark tells us where this particular generation of quarters was produced. But there is still one question left hanging. What if the rarest coin you ever see is not sitting behind museum glass, but quietly waiting in a pocket, a forgotten jar, an old drawer, or a pile of change that everyone else ignored? Keep looking, keep learning, and keep your eyes on the smallest details, because the next coin we examine may reveal an even more shocking secret hiding in plain sight. The Liberty State Quarter Dollar coin from Washington, associated with Washington statehood in 1889 and represented on the 2007 P. Washington State Quarter, can look like nothing more than an ordinary piece of pocket change. Yet this particular coin carries a fascinating connection between American history and modern coin collecting. The 2007 P issue belongs to the 50 State Quarters program and features Mount Rainier rising dramatically in the background, with a salmon leaping through the foreground, creating a design that immediately connects the coin to Washington's natural landscape and Pacific Northwest identity. On the obverse, the familiar portrait of George Washington remains at the center, while the reverse transforms a small piece of metal into a miniature historical scene. The Philadelphia mint mark P is one of the first details a collector should locate, because identifying the correct mint is essential before judging rarity. But here is where the story becomes interesting. The date 1889 belongs to Washington's admission to the Union, while 2007 identifies the quarter itself. So collectors should never confuse the statehood date with the coin minting date. That distinction may seem small, but it is exactly the kind of detail that separates casual searching from serious collecting. Look closely at the reverse, and you can almost feel the landscape Washington was famous for, Mount Rainier dominating the horizon, while the salmon represents one of the region's most recognizable natural resources. The design is not simply decorative. It was selected to communicate Washington's identity in a space barely an inch across. Under magnification, the lettering, edge, fields, devices, and fine details become much more interesting. A normal quarter should show consistent lettering and reasonably sharp design elements, but coins produced at enormous speed can sometimes develop characteristics that attract collectors, including doubled design elements, unusual die deterioration, striking irregularities, or other mint-made anomalies. The important point is that not every odd-looking mark is a valuable error. Scratches, dents, machine damage, environmental discoloration, and damage caused after the coin left the mint can easily imitate something rare. That is why the real excitement begins when an unusual feature survives careful examination and can be connected to a legitimate minting process. A tiny separation in a letter, an unexpected contour around a design element, or an unusual relationship between the rim and the central design could turn an ordinary-looking quarter into something worth investigating further. The 2007 P. Washington quarter was struck in enormous numbers, which means the basic date and mint mark alone do not automatically make it rare. Instead, collectors searching for exceptional examples need to think in layers. First comes identification. Washington, 2007, the P mint mark, and the reverse featuring Mount Rainier and the salmon. Next comes condition. A coin that spent years sliding across counters and rattling inside vending machines will tell a completely different story from one that was carefully preserved soon after leaving the mint. Look for original surfaces, strong detail, minimal contact marks, and a clean, attractive appearance rather than simply assuming that an old-looking or shiny coin must be valuable. Then comes the question of variation. Could there be doubling? Is the strike unusually weak or unusually sharp? Does the rim appear normal and evenly formed? Are the design elements properly aligned? These are the questions that turn a casual glance into a genuine investigation, and the more convincing the evidence becomes, the more interesting the coin becomes to the collecting community. Now imagine finding one of these quarters in a jar that has been sitting untouched for years, perhaps mixed among coins that nobody thought were worth examining. At first, it might seem almost ridiculous to imagine a quarter creating a financial surprise, but collectors know that the greatest discoveries often begin with curiosity rather than certainty. For illustrative purposes only, a coin displaying a minor but legitimate variation might enter a hypothetical storytelling ladder around the $2,500 to $3,500 range, while a more notable and well-documented example could be imagined around $9,000 in an extraordinary market scenario. A high-grade coin with exceptional preservation might be discussed around $5,000, while an unusual mint anomaly could potentially be placed around $6,000 for illustration. These numbers are not promises, price guarantees, or claims that every 2007 P. Washington quarter is worth thousands of dollars. Actual values depend on authentication, grade, rarity, market demand, and the exact nature of the variety or error. Still, that possibility is what makes the search so compelling. The difference between an ordinary quarter and an exceptional collectible can sometimes come down to a detail so small that most people never notice it. The latter can become even more dramatic when several desirable characteristics appear together. A rare collector piece might be imagined around $7,500, while an exceptionally preserved or genuinely uncommon coin could be discussed at an illustrative $8,000 level. An unusual discovery supported by strong collector demand might reach a hypothetical $8,500, and an extraordinary or historically significant example could be imagined at the upper end near $9,000. Again, these figures are purely illustrative and never guaranteed. They are storytelling examples showing how rarity, condition, authentication, and demand can interact in the marketplace. For someone holding an unusual quarter, the emotional impact is easy to understand. A legitimate high-value discovery could feel like an unexpected windfall, perhaps even resembling a down payment on a home in some circumstances. But responsible collectors should resist the temptation to assign a huge value before the coin has been properly examined. The real treasure is not the number someone writes beside the coin on a social media post. It is the evidence proving why that coin is different from millions of ordinary examples. So how should you examine a 2007 P Washington quarter without damaging it? Start with the weight, using a properly calibrated digital scale, and comparing the result with the normal specification for the coin. A significant difference can be a reason for further investigation, but weight alone does not prove an error because wear, contamination, damage, or other factors can influence measurements. Examine the metal color under neutral lighting and look for anything inconsistent with the expected appearance. But remember that discoloration and chemical exposure can dramatically alter a coin's surface. Check the strike alignment by carefully comparing the obverse and reverse orientation. Inspect the rim for unusual shape or metal displacement. And use magnification to study lettering for genuine doubling rather than simple scratches or flattened edges. Never clean, polish, scrape, or chemically treat a suspected error coin, because aggressive cleaning can destroy original surfaces and reduce collector appeal. If something genuinely unusual appears, photograph it from multiple angles, record the weight and observations, and seek an experienced numismatist or professional grading and authentication service before believing any extraordinary valuation. And this is where the 2007 P Washington quarter becomes more than just another piece of pocket change. It becomes a reminder that American history can survive in the most ordinary places. The year 1889 represents Washington entering the Union, while the 2007 quarter captures that state's identity through Mount Rainier and the salmon, creating a fascinating bridge between the past and the modern collecting world. Somewhere, a coin could be sitting in an old collection, a forgotten jar, a drawer, or a cash box, waiting for someone patient enough to notice the details everyone else ignored. Most will be ordinary, and that is precisely why a truly authenticated rarity can be so exciting. The dream is not to believe every quarter is a fortune. The dream is to know enough to recognize the one that deserves a second look. And if this Washington quarter has taught us anything, it is that the smallest details can carry the biggest surprises. So before you spend that next quarter, pause for just a few seconds and look again, because the coin you almost dismissed could contain a story that has been waiting for decades to be discovered. Check the date. Confirm the Philadelphia P mint mark, study the design, inspect the rim, compare the strike, examine the lettering, and most importantly, remain skeptical of unbelievable claims until qualified professionals verify them. The hypothetical $2,500, $5,000, $6,000, $7,500, $8,000, $8,500, or even $9,000 figures we explored are possibilities for storytelling, not guaranteed values, and genuine market prices can be dramatically different. Yet that uncertainty is what keeps collectors searching, because every ordinary-looking coin carries the possibility of something unexpected. And just when you think you have seen the rarest Washington quarter hiding in plain sight, another coin may be waiting to steal the spotlight. One with an even stranger combination of date, mint mark, condition, and mysterious minting characteristics. The next coin could be the one that makes you look twice at every piece of change you ever receive.